Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the PCS 2022 Spring Split. Week 6 will be continuing right now for you as we get towards the end of the split itself. My name's Hysterix. I'm joined by Clement Chu once again. It is a pleasure to be back on the broadcast, sponsored by CTBC Bank and Caliber. And Clement, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say thanks to Riot, to Carry Live, to Garena for the operation of the PCS League and the full production overall. Now, sir, now that we've got through that, it is a pleasure to be back with you again and back on the PCS after what I could say is your league is continuing to heat up.
The pleasure is all mine. I think we have a great set of games today. Yesterday, there were a lot of games with teams very far apart in the standings, but today they are coming head-to-head. We have the Battle of the Wooden Spoon down at the bottom, and the top teams clashing at the top of the ladder as well. Yep. So I feel like this is going to be a much closer day.
A lot of PSG talent games to get out of the way as well as we open things up. But before we get there, quick talk about yesterday. I know we'll be having a look shortly. Because yesterday, as I was catching up, Clement, I noticed there's a lot of that back and forth motion that we're talking about. A lot of your standings tying themselves up again, like J-Team, missing out on a win, but tying themselves up with Beyond Gaming. Frank Esports kind of building that bridge. And it feels like your top 8 is solidifying itself ever so slightly.
I would say it's kind of a top 5 and sort of like 5 to 8, and then 8 and 9, and then 9 and 10. That's why I kind of see like the 3 tiers of the PCS right now. But it's really interesting to see the top 5 because I think they all have a legitimate chance against each other, and 7 wins is sort of that breakoff point where you see getting elite status, especially with J-Team and Beyond Gaming moving beyond that mark yesterday.
And, I was talking about it at the start, like J-Team unable to get the win against PSG. Such a great early game. And then it all fell apart. I was surprised against Frank Esports, Clement, that they even got the win there to net them up to the 7 alongside Beyond.
Yeah, the big question in the Taiwanese community yesterday was what happened to the original J-Team? They used to, everyone expected them to lead the charge as the best version of J-Team, but now they're kind of the third fiddle in this J-Team trifecta, and we're going to see if they can bounce back today, because I just feel like J-Team are a team that is on 2 extremes. They usually play really slow, but their actually best win strategy is through Uniboy and Kongyue. When that doesn't get going, you see them in the standings right now. They're currently sitting at the bottom of that top 5 cutoff goal.
Yeah, only pulling up their first win again, breaking this streak coming through yesterday. But Clement was just telling you, the top 5 looked like its own little bubble. Beyond have really worked their way into the split. At the start, it was a very slow start, to be fair. But, those great names have built themselves up. PSG Talon, a 7-win streak, Clement. I was getting concerned as we opened things up with a loss, but I am glad finally that PSG Talon are getting their games out of the way and are looking like that top 3, top 4 team at the moment.
I do have to put an asterisk next to that because they have not played against CFO or DCG, and those are your top 1 and 2 teams. So whether PSG can actually keep this going is a huge concern. They didn't really have a good game against J-Team yesterday. They started down 6,000 gold, but what PSG is known for is just their team fight and macro sense. I think they're on a level on their own, and maybe that will able them to inch over CFO, who statistically have a much better laning phase.
Because we get that answer today, and it's good that you bring that up. Against Deep Cross Gaming, it was delayed. CDBC, the same there as well from Flying Oyster. So PSG, at least we get one of the answers out of the way. They have back-to-back games opening us up against Frank Esports, who have been looking better and better as the split goes on. But as we kind of open things up and get through this massive day of PCS, reminder, 6 games coming through, so we're going to be with you for a long time tonight. PSG and CDBC Flying Oyster, Clement, 2 of the best teams in the league, easy to say right now. And while we look for that answer, I think it's fair to say that both these teams in their own way have been stellar. And I want you to start me with CDBC Flying Oyster, because the solo laners, in not even recent form, but just throughout the split, have been exceptional.
Yeah, I feel like CTBC are just starting from such a strong point when they go into games, just because their laning phase, it allows them to have a lot of flexibility on where they want to go with the draft. They could go with an early aggressive strategy, or even more of a late game strategy. On the other hand, for PSG, I think they have, this is kind of interesting. This team is definitely CTBC, so we had a bit of a graphic mix up here. So I guess I will continue talking about CTBC right here.
Please do.
Yeah, I think the most important matchup for me in this one. Oh, okay, we're getting kind of crossed.
Clement get thrown off, dude. All right. We're getting a nice mix.
The most important thing here is the top lane matchup, because counterintuitively, even though you see Rest as kind of the main fighter guy, the guy that does a lot of split pushing, a lot of DMing, Hanabi has actually had a pretty good record against Rest, especially during the playoffs where it really counts. So this is always a matchup I've been very curious about. You know, people kind of talk about Hanabi, they talk about him being a blue-collar top laner, but the fact is that when you give him fighter, when you give him resources, he can really hold his own, and it's been proven again and again. Rest still hasn't made it to Worlds, while Hanabi has been there a lot of times.
That's right. So we want to see how Rest, builds his bridge to that, because at the moment, CDBC holding the top spot, but again, tied with Deep Cross Gaming, PSG a little bit under them, which is why we open up with a top tier matchup. And, coming back to it as well, while Rest hasn't made it to Worlds, like this is a really big split. And I wanted you to give me more context because I've only just arrived. I've seen flashes of PCS. Is this looking like Rest's best split, or is he just kind of always been in this form and continues to show?
I think it's very interesting because the team hasn't actually relied on him that much. We haven't really seen a team where it is a pure snowball game from start to finish, with Gemini going to Rest all the time. In fact, Rest has pretty much been able to hold his own 1v2. That's kind of his role on the team, and we see much more of a dynamic where Gemini and Mission are trying to play together. Now, I'm not saying that I feel like Mission and Gemini are necessarily a particularly strong duo. I think Mission has a very clear playstyle where he's always more about his own laning phase rather than roaming. But it has allowed kind of a solo operation in the top lane, and for Gemini to go elsewhere on the map, kind of shore up their bot lane, be wherever he wants to be. And you can tell in that first blood participation rate. I think this is going to be a huge part of the matchup. Gemini has been super active in the early game, 44%, almost double the amount of first bloods that you're seeing coming out of Juhan.
So walk me through Juhan on the other side, because for PSG Talon's jungler, a lot of pressure here, considering you talk about Hanabi being... It's someone we don't talk about as much in a solo lane capacity, but still has the capacity itself. But this team feels very much about the bottom lane and how strong that 2v2 is.
Yeah, I think Juhan's mission is very different from what Gemini has to do. Juhan, for me, he's about protecting the solo lanes. Hanabi and Bae usually play super slow. They're not aggro players at all. And he just kind of has a defensive posture. He'll gank for the bot lane. But I think he's mainly just there for kind of Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, early game support, make sure your laners are set up. And PSG this season, we've been saying this the whole split long, they are a much slower team. They're much more team fight focused and 5v5 oriented.
You did talk about this team having great macro before, so I look at PSG on the blue side, CFO on red. Remember, this is a highlight matchup. We open up with PSG catching up in some of their missed matches throughout the weeks. And as we go on to pick and ban in 12.4, I see some pretty strong PCS-specific bans, right? Gwen has been great here. Your Zeri as well is 100% big ban. That continues the trend, and it's a triple AD ban, in fact, against Unified.
This is super interesting. Like, people have tried this strategy before. You just want to make sure that, let's be honest, like, this is probably the most one-sided part about this matchup is Unified's versus Atlan. I would rate Unified about 2 levels above Atlan. So if you can take out all the tier 1s and force everyone to kind of scrap for the Jins, the Caitlyn's of the world, or maybe even the Zayas, then you really level the playing field. You take away a lot of that skill factor, and hey, CFO know that. They're going to hard force this, potentially take away Unified's Jin. He is probably his best known champion. He is kind of the Hong Kong sniper. So let's see if that gets denied.
I like at least looking at the 80 carry first alongside that point. With the Jin locked in, there we go. So that's a 4th 80 carry denied away from Unified. And a strong jungle at the moment. This is seen in the LPL, this is seen in PCS. We get the Hecarim for Gemini.
That's a really good team fighter. I feel like if you're going to go for the Hecarim, it really allows you to put a lot of different combos here. We have seen with the Jin team comps, Jin just tries to stay as far away from the fight as possible, and then you have a forward running sort of wombo combo going in with the Orianna, which also is probably Mission's best champion going into the front line. PSG, they are forced into some difficult decisions here. Zaya recently buffed on 12.4, but this is going to be the first time we see her this split.
But Rakan doesn't come through with it, because usually when we see Zaya in the meta, or at least picked, it's always that Rakan partnership. And Kaiwing is an amazing Rakan, but hasn't played at this split. 5 different champions, Rakan not one of them.
Yeah, I think the Zaya Rakan for me is a little bit questionable, because I'm not sure that Kaiwing's role this split has been that much of an engage sort of role. I feel like Juhan, I feel like the Zaya Rakan is not necessarily a compositional pick, it's more of a laning decision. So it does skew your composition to playing more for the early game and playing more for, I would say, more for catch. And that just simply hasn't been what PSG has been doing recently. We'll see if they can pull it off. They should know some of their old tricks. But on the other hand, CFO, as we talked about, Orianna plus Hecarim into just dive your backline combination, way too strong to pass up.
It's so easy, isn't it? Mission is also 3-0 on this pick, 33 KDA, no losses taken. So it's a big one here for the CDBC Flying Oyster roster. And as we get our mid jungle, just note on the other side, no jungler picked up in the first rotation. It's quite rare to talk about. So CFO start banning away the top priority. And that means for Juhan, he's going to be going down the tier list of what's left available.
Yeah, we have seen Juhan. I think his priorities, like we talked about, much more about early game. They have played a lot of Lee Sin versus Rise. It's a very strong laning duo. I would expect the Xin Zhao to go as well. Like if you're banning the Lee Sin, I think it makes the most sense to also just take away the Xin. The two serve very similar functions in being incredibly strong, sort of AD duelist champions in the early game, but wow, actually leaving the Xin open for the Diana. Huh.
Okay, I guess scared of Rakan Diana. Wasn't it you who said either last week or maybe it was with me, you're talking about Rakan Diana as a combo, and it kind of feels a little bit deadly. So I guess we take that one out of the way, and that means Xin Zhao that you were just mentioning is left and available. Not even going to talk about the Yuumi here. Don't like the champion, Clement, but we do get a double support ban once again. So very heavy on targeting the roles in this first ban.
Yeah, this is very interesting on what these teams are kind of thinking what to do. I feel like for CFO, it's much easier to read. They just need another top lane combo piece. I don't mind the Graves here. I just feel like Graves with the collateral damage and the range on that ability just makes short work of whatever backline they're facing.
True.
It's not, I wouldn't say, the best late game composition overall, given their pieces. There's definitely some like descaling elements in Jhin and Graves. But it would be a nice rounder, and there's still a lot of options for Rest to kind of pick and choose what he wants. But he's definitely looking for something that can deal damage from a long distance, either rushing in or just going with the Graves.
But as PSG round themselves out, I mean, Clement, I'm just seeing a composition that is great with all in, very situational engaged with the Nab, but I'm still going to say engaged at the least. They're going to pile in, whether it's the Xin Zhao, whether it's the Jarvan.
Yeah. The Jarvan is an interesting idea. I think the two champions are really going to showcase like the mentality that PSG has with this draft. If they're going to go for the Jarvan, it's much more about team fighting. You're looking at Jhin and Orianna, two immobile carries in the back, and you just want to run forward with them. And for CFO, this is a Xiaohu pick, but I'm not sure Rest is going to play this all that much. I would be very surprised if he actually locks this in. I think the GP is probably the go-to answer right here. Jace is definitely not it.
Not it?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that, Clement? We get Jace, so tell me why this is not it.
Well, there's a number of factors here. The first one is I don't think Jace actually combos up well with a Shock Blast and like Onslaught of Shadow combo. It's not easy to chain the damage together, and it also means that you're running 3 champions that can get run down quite easily. So it makes your composition, I think, somewhat one-dimensional. If Juan is tanky enough, he gets an early lead, he's going to get engages, and he's going to get members to kill off very, very easily. I would have much preferred, like even the Lucian, I think I would have preferred a little bit more. Or even the Gameplink. I think the Gameplink would have complemented the idea of just blowing a target up in the backline. But the Jace it doesn't have the poke to support it, and it also just it feels like a field day for Jarvan at this point.
That's true, and especially with the comp provided. So PSG Talon, Clement, seeing the Gnar, seeing the Rakan, Xayah, like a team fighting skirmish comp. Am I along the right direction for what PSG want to do in this game?
For PSG, I think it is more of a laning focus for them for sure, but it's going to be bot lane dominated. So the most important things that you're going to be looking for are that sort of level 6 dive windows that we have seen with the Realm Warp so often. With the Cataclysm and the EQ combo, it's very difficult for bot laners to escape. So I think that's going to be their big break point. I don't think you're going to see much early game though. Early game, neither the mid lane or the top lane do have a lot of kill pressure, so it should be relatively quiet until level 6. And on the other side for CFO, it's also quite interesting. I think they're going to be heading a little bit more towards the top side. If you get a good push on the top side, there could be some dive potential. But otherwise, I think they're looking for sort of like a first strike potential. Like if they get the fight before PSG can set up, then they theoretically should have the advantage given their composition.
Which is kind of interesting because we did talk about CFO, not putting too much attention to Rest. Like Gemini and Mission are the mid-jungle duo. Rest often fending off the 1v2 dives, the 1v2 plays, like as we saw in their last game. So this time around, making it a little bit more interesting with the Jace up in the top side as we enter Summoner's Rift. CFO versus PSG. This is a catch-up game, hence having 6 games tonight. PSG playing back-to-back games, and one of the ones that we unfortunately missed about a week ago was the matchup in front of us. And now that we get it, we get to find out a little bit closer to, who's one of the top teams. CFO win this. They hold themselves in first with a nice game lead. PSG could tie themselves up as well with the top 2 teams as well, with DCG a little bit above them. So kind of exciting to get this wrapped up because as we go into this game, Clement, we've also got drafts that I think are a little bit out of left field. We had a lot of 80 carry bands coming through, hence we now have a Zyra in the game who has started with a longsword, and the Zyras we've been seeing recently with the Airy coming through, the lethality, the Q max, meaning poke, has been pretty deadly within the lane.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of interesting to see kind of Xayah getting back into the grind with other champions. On 12.4, she was buffed in terms of her Blade Caller damage, so we actually see people not really maxing Blade Caller as much as in previous splits. It's kind of interesting when you buff it. It's like, well, I only need 1 Blade Caller. I don't need the cooldown to go down. Like, 1's probably enough damage to go through. So we actually see a shift more towards the Q and kind of the poke that you have mentioned. But overall, she's definitely buffed on 12.4, and what you're looking for is a little bit more of that burst damage at the start of fights. Ooh, level 2.
Hang on, look mid. Yeah, let's zoom it in. The root comes down. Mission takes a wallop to the face, and Juhan with a level 2 gank on Jarvan takes Mission's flash just like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was a bit mistimed. We saw the Rune Prison land after the Jarvan showed up, so I feel like that combo could have gone a little bit better, or at least they could have just gotten a free flash for flash trade. Still is going to be a slight advantageous to Juhan, but it doesn't mean Gemini will get a 2-camp lead, and now he's charging into the enemy jungle.
But he is spotted out, so Juhan knows he's here. He's walking into trouble. Double buff v double buff. They kiss each other and then leave, and now for the second date. As Gemini pops a ghost, he's a little bit more serious. And Juhan waiting to flag and drag in. Bay using that opportunity to force Mission out. And around the jungle mid 2v2 club, but it looks like this is where our game will start. Not just for CFO.
Yeah, neither mid laners has their flash at this point.
Oh my
Mission
god!
gets knocked up.
Juhan commits a flash right in front of the enemy jungle with first blood! PSG's jungle with an absolute Chad move.
Well done from Juhan. He was just trying to play with the anticipation move. Like, I think Mission thought he was safe. He knew that Gemini was right around the corner, and Juhan caught him red-handed. That was coming out of vision and using the flash to reduce the reaction time coming out of Mission. He just couldn't react fast enough.
A great start to the game after the flash burn. I didn't expect him to arrive that quickly, so kind of doing the do-si-do, and with First Blood going down, the CS lead you talked about for Gemini, meaning less and less. So for PSG, giving the mid lane a bit of leeway as well, Clement. Bay in a great position, and with this wave kind of crushing out against him, curious to see if Juhan just doubles down and keeps putting pressure on CFO's mid.
It could definitely be a possibility. You can tell by the way that Mission is positioning. He's probably not going past River anymore in this matchup, not until he gets his flash up. So it will allow a lot of time for PSG to roam across the map. And we're looking ahead to that 7-minute mark where Rise should, in theory, be able to kind of leave this lane. Mission's not going to get his flash up before that. And that will allow the potential for the Cataclysm Realm Warp to do that 4v2 into the bot side. Now we have Koala coming in, but he is getting spotted.
Yeah, he is. It's a level 14 Jarvan here from Juhan. He's walking down towards his Krugs, and Gemini are going to be spotted out on the control ward as well. Bay just dancing behind the river himself. And as the jungler leaves lane, Clement, you're talking a little bit about these ultis. I think it's important to note as well that while we talk a lot about how PSG can position with the ultimates at that 7-minute mark. For CFO, Shockwave, Onslaught of Shadows, the Hekra Moriana ulti are key factors that you talk about in draft as well. Walk me through how you use it. Is it Herald usage? Is it first couple of objectives where they come into play?
So I think the strength of this combo is just the sheer range that they can kill someone with. Gemini can go really far forward, you can have the ball on him, and then you can finish off with Atlan's damage on the Jhin. So the way I'm reading this composition, it's more of a rotational and catch composition. I don't think it's necessarily all that strong in the 5v5 position. Ooh, Kaiwing.
Yeah, but the root's still going to come through. For Unified and Kaiwing, the 2v2 a success even after Kaiwing misses. Clement, continue. You're on the ball.
Yeah, so I feel like for CFO, a couple things that are important to get catch compositions going is that you need winning side lanes. You need to stretch the map across. And here we have Bay going for another kill.
It's not even, it's a realm warp to mid. Bay tried to wrap around pretending he's going bot, and Mission didn't buy the bait.
That was fairly interesting. Very risky, but way off the mark, I've got to say. I feel like Juhan and Bay are just trying to catch Mission off guard by the sheer amount of ganks that they're throwing his way. Like,
yep. I just love how he's sticking around. I mean, he's constantly in the face of Gemini, but I think Gemini now having a pretty good understanding that mid's fine, and he's still ahead by now 10 CS.
Yeah, that's a very interesting move. I felt like there was a lot more potential for them to actually get things going if they went into the bottom side with that Realm Warp. We could see in the trades that they were definitely winning out, and they have the push advantage there too. So they don't lose anything for sure, but there is like an opportunity cost that was expended there where I felt like PSG would have had a lot more threat going bot lane rather than going mid. We'll see how they play it out, though.
Well, it is that 7-minute mark. Realm Warp's not going to be up and available, so we don't actually get to see that play come into fruition. And Juhan, because of his time spent mid for now, is still level 5. Gemini has Onslaught of Shadows available. Mission with his Shockwave too. We're going to Herald in 30 seconds, Clement, and it does feel like CFO with their, I was going to say Summoner's advantage as well, but it looks pretty even across the board. Ultimate advantage going to be a big deal as Juhan. You'd have to make your way out. Gemini, he doesn't steal it, but he wants the kill. Cataclysm comes down. A lot of burst damage, but Gemini with the Onslaught of Shadows won't take him out. Kaiwing with the hero play to save his jungler and dragon.
Beautifully done coming in there. Juhan with the AD items actually took a huge chunk out of Gemini. I don't think Gemini just expected that damage. I felt like he was thinking that he could just kill them, and Juhan also got the level 6 off of the Drake. So turning the calculations in a split second. And as we were talking about, that bot lane has been in favor of Unified and Kaiwing throughout the majority of the game. Unified willing to expend double summoners just to make sure they get that kill and secure the objective.
So first dragon goes over. Hexgate coming up next, or excuse me, Hextech is coming for the second dragon. As we look at the replay, Clement, because you're right, the burst damage kind of made Juhan in a better position than he should have been.
Yeah, the Smite fight really changed that so much. Juhan getting the level up, getting his Conqueror up, was able to survive that. And we saw Kaiwing and Unified, they knew that this play was going to develop, high chance of it, and they were waiting there.
We now move back to Herald as we're on live, and you can see with the 1k gold lead, PSG feeling confident. They're already on top of it. As it gets taken down, the eye hit again. Juhan's going to get yet another snipe. CFO committed 5 members here, so there is no trade play. It is just a Herald. The CFO try to go back to their lanes.
I feel like CFO don't really have the raw power in a straight-up fight, a fight where you can't poke out your opponent to take PSG front to back. I feel like for CFO, they need to utilize catching a little bit more. This is not exactly a front-to-back composition they will win with, especially if you think about the potential build of like the Frozen Heart that could come out of Bay. It just seems like CFO, they need to be a little bit more creative with this comp. They went in with a very interesting strategy, but so far, I'm not sure we're seeing the benefits of it. They're not losing bot lane so much, but if you're going to triple ban Unified and first pick an AD carry, you do kind of expect a little bit more value out of it.
You'd want something. And talking about creativity as well, like we have Rest, we have Atlan on this team who, you know, Jhin, Jace, Clement, playing with a range advantage here, a good way to kind of dust them off before these objectives. And you talk about the creativity, and it feels like for CFO for a top team. That creativity shouldn't be a problem, considering there are a lot of moving parts in this composition you've already highlighted.
Yeah, I understand why CFO, I think, went for the Jace and in the very end. I think their idea is that we have to outrange this Xayah. That's usually the best way to deal with her, where her Blade Caller is pretty much nullified because you're not in range. But I think they're a little bit too hopeful with that assumption, because PSG actually have incredibly strong engage options. If they can't find the opportunity to front to back, like, they could still Realm Warp Jarvan with a stopwatch into your backline. You're not getting away from that. So I just feel like CFO might have outgamed themselves into some composition deficits that they're not aware of. Here we go.
As Realm Warp comes through, Mission has already gone forward. Now, these Realm Warps, Clement, I will say, as we are complimenting the draft from PSG, FaZe Realm Warps so far have been a big swing and a miss.
Yeah, I really don't like these sort of casual Realm Warps. It's much easier to pincer someone in when you just Realm Warp underneath their tower. Some good vision game by Juhan here. Not going to result into a lot. But, you know, Unified at this point, he does have to sustain in lane, which just means that he can constantly shove Atlan in. He's also building the tier, so both his mana and HP bars are going to be full. I would just want to see them actually just try and use that Realm Warp into the bot lane in much more standard, I would say, LPL fashion.
I guess we have to wait a little bit. Hanabi with the ulti against the wall. This has the potential as Rest going to take the house to his head once again. Really nice hit from Hanabi in the top lane, because Clement, we talked about him and we said that with the right utensils, he would be as good as Rest in the 1v1.
And he's doing it in a matchup where he blind picked the Gnar. Jace is supposed to be a counter pick, and he never fell behind in CS. I was watching this lane. He was always in the lead. Gemini spotted here. Not much going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter, because look at Rest. No mana, no HP. Teleport is available here as Hanabi is just in such a great piece of movement. There's an Eclipse picked up, but he's going to take this wave, teleport to respond to if he wants, and I guess we're going to find out if he's going to use it, because Dragon's coming up in 20 seconds, Clement, and that Gnar is going to be just as strong as Rest now is.
I honestly feel like CFO, they have to make some sort of a catch here. They have to get on the board. Their best way of playing this one is likely to catch up Bay when he is still in the mid lane or in rotation towards the Drake. I don't give them good chances if they have to fight a straight-up 5v5 against PSG at this point.
Because we've already seen, you know, the catch potentials, the engage potentials there on PSG's side too, as they start the Dragon up. And CFO coming from different angles. Mission Shockwave, Gemini's Onslaught of Shadows, those are the tools we want to see. As PSG grouped up as 4, the Dragon's already down. Bay going to get shot down, and Clement, while Dragon goes and nothing comes through, I want to point out, do you know that there are elevation mechanics in League of Legends, especially with Jin's Deadly Flourish? So in River, if it's straight across, it most of the time won't hit because the position outside of the river is more elevated than the river itself.
Okay, so it actually kind of like changes the bullet. Like your W moves with the terrain, not like a real bullet.
Kind of like that as well. I get the hook on in. Kaiwing caught out on Sword of Shadows to pick him off, but that quick escape, man, that was smooth, and the camera couldn't even catch that 1 second of movement.
3 ultimates and an ignite. They don't even get the flash out of Kaiwing.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
E with the Xayah, dude. The range is massive, and I guess one part of why we see this duo when one is picked.
Yeah, Kaiwing knew his limits so damn well there. You know, he gets the Guardian off and is just able to escape just like that. Doesn't even need the heal from Unified for that one. That's also a problem about CFO and their catch sort of strategy is they don't have a lot of targets where it actually makes sense. Only Mininar and Bay, I think, are legitimate targets. And that just makes the execution of this composition so much harder. I just feel like I would have rather seen the game plank against the Gnar. I feel like a stronger matchup in some senses, and the damage is far more consistent.
And more options globally, right? You know, that ultimate and what it provides. If you're talking about the pickoffs, the catch-outs, like peppering them down before fights, setting up for the Hecarim, the shockwave from Orianna, like, you're right, the execution would have been that little bit easier. But now here from Rest, has to be involved, has to be able to get his setup as well. And for PSG, Clement, it's a 2k gold lead just about here at the 15-minute mark. 2 Dragons with an Ocean Soul coming up as well. And Juhan's the one who's been picking up all the kills. He's now got a Gore Drinker. He's got a bounty on his head as well. And for Gemini, he might be up in CS, but so far in this game, his impacts have had about, his ultis, I should say, have had about much impact as base.
And that is pretty much to say, absolutely no impact whatsoever.
There you go.
The two ultimates we got in, the Drake didn't get a kill. We saw the second one on a pick and Kaiwing, still didn't get a kill. And now this is not their home turf for CFO anymore.
It's not. His Ignite comes down to quickness as well. PSG have burned a couple of flashes for this. They're deep in enemy territory, and Gemini won't get charmed on the way out. A PSG going deep, but they're not punished. CFO is making sure they get away.
Yeah, and there was no ultimates expended on CFO, but they lose so much HP that they have to trade across the map. This is the second time that CFO has actually moved their bot lane to try and do this Herald to absolutely no avail and have to walk back. So it's not just the contest that they're losing, they're also losing on the farm that usually is the big equalizer to this play. And you can see PSG now searching ahead in terms of the gold lead. I don't see CFO actually getting a silent advantage anymore, which means they're going to be forced into 5v5s. They're going to have to chance with those poke opportunities.
Or get picked off. Because look, here's the party. Bay has finally brought in a great Realm Warpers against the wall. Rest will get none of that. Hanabi in his ultimate judges up the damage and says, howdy. PSG with their first turret of the game, and Mr. Clement Chu, that's a Realm Warp I can get behind.
Yes, please, use your Realm Warp behind towers. The enemy cannot escape from Realm Warp behind towers. That's the most efficient way to use it. And even if you don't use it, there's so much pressure. That's why I don't think you should just like throw out random Realm Warps on cooldown. I think throughout that play, the most important thing to remember here is that they still have the Herald. The Herald has not been expended, so they're looking for triple outside outer rim towers at this point. And boy, oh boy, I feel like CFO really messed up with that top lane pick. The J so far has done absolutely nothing. Has not won lane, has not had any meaningful poke. And if you just think about it, the game blank, we have seen so many cannon barrage into captive audience combinations. That is your sort of go signal. You can catch people on the sidelines really easily with that combo. I feel like CFO have just sort of, I feel like they outsmarted themselves in a lot of ways. They picked a Jin and it was like, what do we build around this? It's like, well, long range, kind of poke, and then Juhan is like, okay, I'm just gonna go Jarvan.
And you know, banning out a carry like Unified comes in with a Zyre, and it's been fine through the lane. Further on the 80 carry pick, I mean, Atlan hasn't had a super amazing laning phase. In fact, he's CS down when he's been moving every single time. We're gonna get another fight as Koala wants to commit, but Unified, of course, he just ulties, misses the blade call, but it doesn't matter. Kaiwing again with a triple knockup, and Juhan wants to clean up the rest. The burn on Mission continues to quell, but PSG, their comp is so much simpler, Clement.
It definitely is. You just run at the opposition. Again, we were talking about how CFO have very limited targets that they can actually go against. I think going against Xayah there was very opportunistic, and you could see that Mission did not even get a chance to use that shockwave combination because there was a bunch of people standing right on top of him, forward and backwards, and now they're going to lose another Drake.
Curtain call's going to come out, but everyone disengaging. Hanabi is pretty tanky, even as a mini-9. Gemini's deep for this one. Shock Blast did nothing. Unified flashing away, but he's going to have the feathers out. And as the jungler goes down and Hanabi trades his life, Bay joins in the Shockwave late. I don't know what CFO are doing at this point, but they're thinking that going that deep will be okay. On to Bay once more. Rest needs to join up. He's killing a ward for now, as Bay's right in the middle of the pit. Juhan doesn't want to re-engage now. But both
Unified's
teams,
coming.
It's a bit of a question mark. Unified is running at them, and there's the flag and drag. Shock Blast again. Rest not doing enough damage. The Jace will move away, and PSG didn't even lose anyone apart from Hanabi.
And Hanabi barely died right there. He was about to go into Mega Gnar. He would have survived that one, and it would have been a complete wipe for CFO. A couple of things to note right here. First, their catch target selection was definitely off. They need to go for Bay at this point. I don't think he's as tanky as people think he is. He's just completed the Winter's Approach right now. So I feel like for Nautilus and Koala, you have to be more selective on your targets. And this fight, for me, the positioning was all off. It was very difficult for CFO to actually approach from the ramp, especially when you have Unified right there. Gemini is not much of a damage threat. So PSG are pretty happy to just stand their ground. And we don't see Atlan targeting Kaiwing. You know, the execute damage on Hanabi is negligible, and you can see Hanabi almost survives right here. So CFO over chase. I just don't feel like they have a composition that actually chases down all that well. They don't have a lot of speed ups on their composition. This was a somewhat winnable situation for CFO, but once Unified show up, they had to back out. They needed to get the kill onto Bay before Unified was able to join the fray here, and they just kind of bleed out even more members.
And every time you think, oh, it's all right, Rest will get a shock blast back, the damage isn't there. The damage against this team not doing enough, and PSG get away with a huge fight, pushes them up to 5,000 gold. They also get the dragon that Gemini tried to steal. They're on solve point. They are well and truly in control, and always have been, of this game. And as we open up and as PSG catch up against CFO for the first time, I feel like seeing this game is a really good sign of life for PSG. As to what we already knew, that this team was a top 4, top 3 contender at the very least.
Yeah, they play a very suffocating style. You give them an inch in the early game, and they will just hammer it home on the objective plays over and over again. I don't think they are, you know, I would like to see them take more risks, but that's just the LPL spirit talking inside of me. I definitely would have wanted to see them do more tower dives, but, you know, I think they're playing a very standard sort of style, pre-LCKS game where it's slow, grindy, suffocating, but always superior in terms of the teamfight setup, especially around these rigs.
And even if they get picks like this as well, right? For PSG, a little bit deep. Kaiwing forces it though, and Gemini runs in once again. The Ghost, I believe, was popped, or at least... no, we got ourselves a phase rush Hecarim, excuse me. And it's, again, PSG going deeper and deeper for this vision line. And CFO trying to find a pick themselves before this dragon spawns, because Ocean Soul looks a little bit free at this point.
Ocean Soul is probably the worst one if you're CFO. You're trying to poke them down, you don't have map control, pick isn't an option anymore. Your only hope is Rest and Atlan somehow taking Juhan or taking Unified down low. I just don't see that happening, especially with the Ocean Soul going towards PSG. So I feel like if I'm CFO, this is an all-or-nothing moment. If they get Ocean Soul, my chances in the game are next to nil. So I expect them to be able to give up. I would be willing to give up the top tier 2 tower just for a better setup on this objective.
Well, 45 seconds. They're going to start moving now. Teleport's available for both Rest and Mission. We haven't seen the Onslaught of Shadow Shockwave combination. We haven't seen Curtain Call comboed with Shock Blast or some of the ultis I just mentioned. Koala in the last fight as well, Clement, used his ulti on Unified in order to force out Unified to pop into the Featherstorm. But the problem is PSG have so many of these tools that it comes down to such precise mechanics that need to be spot on. And with Dragon coming up in 15 seconds, I'm really hoping for the best for CFO to give us those perfect combinations.
I do see the poke coming in. CFO, as we anticipated, is going to go all in onto this objective. But Koala right now, he doesn't have the HP anymore.
One-man Shockwave.
Juhan.
And he goes golden. It's the Jarvan who's going to buy space. They want to get the jungle, but he flags and drags in the team protecting him. Bay tanking up at this point, and Hanabi about to go Mega Gnar. Curtain Call being delayed, but everybody's out for now. The poke from Unified, disgusting. Rest the second time. He hasn't got that Shock Blast through a Hex Gate. And as CFO move into the pit, their health bars are glimmering.
That was just an auto QE combo coming in from Unified, taking Rest down to below half HP. We're talking about the poke game. Unified does a lot of good poke himself, and Koala might be going a little bit too far forward. They're just biding time here for Juhan to get his HP bar back up, and I like this positioning from Koala. He's trying to deny the ramp, but PSG are still fighting.
Realm Warp. It's a Realm Warp, but he wants to go in onto the pit. The Dragon getting low, reset Cataclysm on the back line as well, but PSG are fighting front to back with Bay now there. Ocean Soul given over. You know what? Bay heard me talking smack as he flashes forward into the Koala. That bear ain't got claws. Hanabi going to slow him down the house, throwing the turret, helping out. Another flash, and that's the loan that he needed to pay. As Mission runs up, it's all done for CFO.
Oh, CFO, they try to hold the ramp, but they forget about the Realm Warp. Bay with a great use of that ultimate gets straight into the back line and instantly disperses the entirety of CFO. Mission's got nowhere to go. He's going to fall down. I just, once again, have to say CFO's composition, they have so few outs in these situations. I don't think themselves have a very clear idea on how to play this one out. The Xayah ended up being a stroke of genius. It's just one of those 80 carries that you cannot burst down.
I mean, Unified poke has been deadly. Been more than rest. It's been more than the Chase combo at this point of the game. And with Unified once again stepping up, Kaiwing, of course, alongside with him. They're not going to flip this. It is actually taken by Kaiwing, but as Hanabi's on the backside, he makes sure that Gemini's going to feel the wrath of a Meganara in the wall. An absolute killing spree for Unified, and a Baron to make this game feel even more done than it was.
Yeah, there's so little that CFO can actually do right now. We have most of the armor items on the front line complete. We're going to take another look at this teamfight situation. So what Mission is trying to do is he's trying to burst down Juhan. If he does get the kill onto the jungle, if that succeeds, that means that PSG cannot take this Dragon Soul in peace. But Juhan, very smartly, has already got his stopwatch there. He didn't go for the completed item, went for the stopwatch because this soul is coming up. I think that's a great idea. And you see the poke coming up from Unified. He just does so much damage, and CFO can't find an angle with their composition where they're actually superior against PSG. It just feels like PSG comp has everything covered. They have the better engage, they have the better poke, and as we see right now, this very clever use of Bay to send Kaiwing into the back line, and Rest dies right off the bat. Rest flashes in for the kill onto Unified, does absolutely nothing. And then you see the backline right here. To be honest, the Realm Orb didn't really land all that well onto his target. Atlan actually kills Juhan right off the bat. But it doesn't matter. It's still going to be kill secured. They still scatter their formation, and they get an instant engage where the enemy doesn't get to poke you.
I mean, Hanabi as well, like, you know, not doing too much until he goes into Megadara in that fight, but everyone in PSG feels like they're on the same page. This is a really good game to show the example of why PSG are on that 7-win streak in the PCS. At 27 minutes, they're a team that's pulled up the Ocean Soul against CFO, and the gold lead has moved to about 10,000. The inner turret through mid going down, Bay pushing down bot side, top side as well. This coordination of all three waves, Clement, are putting pressure on CFO in their base.
This is just absolutely brutal to watch. CFO at this point don't even have good wave clear to clear some of this out. Jin is not a strong wave clear champion. They're pretty much reliant on Orianna to help them survive this. And PSG just aren't going to give them the chance. With 10k advantage, I expect PSG to just go all in if CFO even take one step extra.
I mean, Koala missing the dredge line, and PSG with now 2 inhibitor turrets taken down. The second inhibitor will drop as well. You talk about the cleanliness of play, not overstepping their mark, being very delicate as they take this back away with the Baron buff. CFO still on their last legs, but you just kind of wonder how it happened as the Realm Warp's coming through. They're going to bring a minion wave in, or excuse me, 3 members right in front of the inhibitor turret, and that's going to drop as well.
Are you calling Bay a minion? Is that what you're doing? No,
no,
just kidding.
I can't because after the early game, we bagged out his Realm Warp, but now he's been kicking butt as Juhan goes in for the Flash Cataclysm, and Atlan burns his own. Rest now jumping onto Hanabi, but look at this top laner, level 17 with the Mega Narbar brewing, and PSG, nice and easy, does it in under 30 minutes. Made CFO look like nothing. Made them look like the bottom tier team with how one-sided this felt, cleaning up the pieces, as now a Nexus turret is falling very short. Red flag not connecting. Hanabi with the ulti, and Onslaught of Shadows a bit late. Shockwave good, but Clement, that's the first time we've seen the combo, and it's way too late. Mission, the last standing, but not for much longer. A clean ace for PSG in front of the Nexus as they move up and tie with CFO 8-2.
What a
1, I should say.
Dominating game coming out from PSG. We were talking about this league being the J-Team trifecta, but PSG have just shattered that conception here. I feel like this was such a clean game from them. The drafting from Corgi, absolutely beautiful with the Xayah pick. And unfortunately for CFO, I just think that they didn't get much out of the triple ban AD carry. They still ceded lane priority, and they also didn't have a very strong idea of what their composition was meant to accomplish. I just think that if they wanted to run this comp, And if they wanted the focus to be on the Ori and Hecarim combo, they needed to ensure that at least Rest won the side lane. If he could win the side lane, I think it changes a lot more of the dynamics.
I mean, we spent a lot of time there talking about draft, so rightly so. I'm glad you told me in the early part, and especially when that Jace was locked in, that for CFO, the draft pieces didn't fit together. It didn't synergize as well as something that could help Mission, help Gemini. Because in this game, I said at the end, Clement, like, that was the first time we saw Hecarim ulti and Orianna ulti put together. CFO didn't have a chance in those 29 minutes to actually pull together that perfect fight that looks so hard to achieve.
Yeah, it was very difficult for them to find any chances right here. And this is kind of the big question of CFO. So far, they've been coasting on what essentially is laning strength. And we should make no mistake about this. Lane strength is not a strategy. Those two are completely different things. They can augment a strategy, but it should not be your strategy in and of itself.
Hang on, Clement. IG 2018, what a word, dude. Top esports for the past couple of years. What a word. Even though they actually had a better strategy outside the lane, but your response.
I don't actually think they had a better strategy outside of the lane, but I will say that if you're Rookie and the Shy, okay, I'll give that to you. That's actually a strategy. And if you're IG with unlimited cash, okay, I will concede that just getting the best players, 5 best player on the team, without no strategy, without even a coach, is probably okay. But not in the PCS. That's not how it works.
And you're exactly right. And what we saw in the lane itself, like, we did talk about Hanabi being a great laner within the realms of the PCS, and even globally, he's a well-known top laner. Against Rest, who's still been playing well, the gap didn't look that large. In fact, with limited jungle attention towards the top side, Hanabi had a really good time into the Jace, and I don't think I've seen a Nard do that well into the Jace for a very long time.
Yeah, I just don't think that Rest was actually aggressive enough with that matchup. You can kind of point into Juhan having a 2-0 lead at the really start of the game. Maybe that put a lot of pressure on him. But this Nara was able to take 2 turret plates in the laning phase before the Herald, uncontested. And we're taking a look at the graphs right here. Really no comeback from CFO at all. They didn't find a chance to fight back. It was a one-sided affair from start to finish. And if you look at the damage numbers here, I think it's very telling. We have a lot of damage coming out from Jace, their only poke source, but nothing to follow up on. There was no one poking with him. If there was a Corki, maybe I could understand the composition. There wasn't.
No, again, for CDBC Flying Oyster, kind of off track, because, I don't feel like... Have you been looking at their draft? Have you been kind of critical on that? A question for us afterwards, Clement. For now, we celebrate the winners, and then we ask the big brain questions, because Juhan in the early game, that level 2 gank mid, man, I feel like it set up a lot.
It definitely did. They got the flash earlier on, though the combo was actually mis-executed. We still got the flash in, and they were able to just use that jousting power of having the EQ and joust flash first against Mission to just catch him out red-handed, just catch him out with his pants down. Gemini was close to that play, but he really couldn't respond to the burst damage there. And I think we are seeing kind of what Juhan sort of fits into. I don't see him as much of a duelist. I think he is much more reserved when it comes to going all in against other enemy junglers. But what he will do is he will make sure his solo lanes are always in the lead, and he has a pretty good teamfight sense of when to engage. We saw a very strong indication of him sticking to Bay almost throughout all plays.
Yeah. I mean, again, that Korean important jungle and mid, like, you get that synergy coming through, and it's good to see from PSG Talon. Clement, we can talk about CDBC Flying Oyster in a little bit. For now, we go to a break, because PSG Talon, they're not done. They're about to play Frank Esports in the second match of the night here on the PCS. Don't go anywhere.